Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and I am here with Joseph Shirley, composer on the Book of Boba Fett, which is a very exciting Star Wars series. And I think maybe out of any franchise in the world, Star Wars has some of the most iconic music, thinking all the way back to John Williams' score, what was done on The Mandalorian and Rogue One. Um, when you sat down to do Book of Boba Fett, what was kind of the goal? How do you think about how is this what I'm going to create live in this pantheon of amazing music?
Right. Yeah, I mean, the legacy of this franchise is just something to behold. That's what drew me into film music in general is when I was a kid watching and listening to John Williams' work in the original trilogy. And so that's not lost on me. And um, I know how important that musical legacy is, and then having the opportunity to work alongside Ludwig Göransson on The Mandalorian was just a total honor, really. And just, to be involved in that with him was a trip. It was a trip of a lifetime. So, but when, that carries us on to the Book of Boba Fett. I mean, when Ludwig gave me the call to invite me into that process with him, he was going to write the themes and I was going to handle the score. We did want to differentiate the Book of Boba Fett from the other two seasons of The Mandalorian, even though Boba Fett does show up, in season 2 of The Mandalorian and plays like a crucial role in that storyline. We still wanted to preserve some of his themes from that episode in particular, but then also build upon it and grow upon that. And yeah, just to differentiate it in some sort of way. So I mean, for Boba, we came up with kind of a different, I guess, texture for him and a different sort of ethnic stroke of the brush in a sense. And we wanted to just have Boba's sound sort of exist in a bit more prominence, obviously, so, this would be his show.
Yeah.
So Ludwig came up with an amazing main title, an amazing main theme for him. And I kind of used that and took some of that, some of that inspiration of the main title with a lot of vocals and things. And, so we leaned on a lot of sung vocals on, deep baritone voices throughout the score. And that was a fun way. That was a fun way to just sort of open up a new sound palette that we could draw upon within the score.
Yeah. And it's interesting to have, kind of co-composers in a way. You said splitting it between themes and composing. But what was the collaboration process like? Are you ever working in the same space? How do you sort of delineate tasks that way?
Yeah. Well, I worked for Ludwig for 6 years and we were in the same studio. And so I would say that, I still look to him as a mentor, and he's become, I'm excited to say that we've become friends, through it all, so, I mean, it's very nice to work that closely with somebody in the same space. I mean, we're working in different studios now, but we still collaborate on things together, so, I mean, there is something to be said about being in the same space as a person. I think when you can, read their body language and you can have that instant feedback and instant dialogue with somebody to flesh out ideas and everything. I mean, I would say that like with COVID, we all are now speaking to each other over different streaming, different browser communication platforms and everything. And I would look forward to the sit down, the one-on-one to happen a little bit more, with directors, producers, it goes across the board. So, but yeah, you learn a lot just from being with somebody, I think, for so long. But I think with the Book of Boba Fett, we had built such a sound palette early on, like with initial ideas. I mean, how this show started out was I was just building out suites and putting ideas together, and Ludwig was working on that main theme. And so we kind of like came up with a new palette in that sort of way. And I'd go sit down with him in his studio and we'd listen through stuff and kind of hash it out, talk through it with him and his team. and then I would take that back to my studio and start working out the score,
Hmm. And
Yeah.
what was exciting to me when The Mandalorian released is that it was a Star Wars story, but really has all this Western influence
Yeah.
to it, even in the music. For this series with Boba Fett, was there a similar, where would the inspiration come from for this series? Were there other kind of flavors you were hoping to put in there?
Totally. I mean, the funny thing about the Book of Boba Fett, the way that the story is laid out, there are two different time periods that they'll cut to and from, and trying to find a way musically to differentiate within the show those two timelines, so that was one thing. But then also in each timeline, there were different, I guess, tropes that the directors, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and Robert Rodriguez, really would lean into in certain ways. And so we thought it would be fun musically to also lean into those, for instance, like in the present day timeline, I guess, with Boba Fett, it's, he's become like a crime boss. He's like he's the godfather of Tatooine, of his town on Tatooine. And so there was a bit of like an Italian sort of classic retro Italian film score sound that we thought was kind of fun to play around with, thinking back to the Godfather scores. And just, I love that sort of string writing. So, that there was, some moments of that sort of inspiration. But then it went, all the way down the line to maybe like, heavy duty action and very electronic music. I mean, in the flashback timeline, it was very, very driven by this sort of ethnic vocal singing that you can hear in the main title that Ludwig came up with. And it kind of has this more like gritty, edgy, so almost like ceremonial, religious sort of tribal sound to it, very like primal. And so I mean, the score itself goes into a lot of different areas, and then there's this whole mod gang with all these different electronic parts on their bodies. So we went super electric, sort of like early 2000s retro like dance music with them, and that was kind of fun. And then obviously the story goes on, and all the different characters that we know and love from other Star Wars stories start coming in, so it gets more traditional Star Wars in certain areas. So I mean, it really, you kind of like follow what the story is telling you. You try to support the picture in the story that they're telling in that moment, so the picture will tell you what to do, in that sort of way.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments of the whole thing happens in the flashback timeline in episode 2, where he has to go on this basically like a vision quest type of thing.
Yeah.
And the music is so important when he's having those visions to build the tension and the mystery of it all. How did you approach that scene?
It was a pretty psychedelic trip that he went on, and it was very surprising when we first saw it and first spotted that scene, to see that sort of visual language happening, in this story. And it was very exciting. The approach, I would say, is just to really emphasize, to really lean in on the fact that Boba is having an almost religious experience, a very, very deep and intense religious experience. And that piece of music, while he's searching for that stick, and he finally finds the stick, and it's almost like he becomes one with his Tusken tribe, just really wanted to amp up. It becomes like a horror movie. He kind of loses himself, and he's looking, then he's looking for himself, and he finds the stick and brings it back to the tribe, and they have this very beautiful religious ceremony for him. I mean, it was just really trying to push the limits of that scene, because the way that they had shot it was so dark and psychedelic and kind of trippy, to just put it in like a layman's term. But like, it was fun to really like try to, accentuate the horror aspect of it, and just like the sort of surreal, experience that Boba was going through.
Yeah. As a fan, it was kind of it was pleasantly surprising that this character got such a like spiritual journey. I don't think I expected that for him.
Right.
having, he was introduced as a bounty hunter, so like when you think of those moments, I noticed a lot of the spiritual moments, like when he does come back to the tribe with and finally trains with the gaffy stick, there's a lot of vocal elements that start getting incorporated in the score. Can you talk about that a little bit? Why was that appropriate for that section?
Right. I think we decided to use vocals because it just felt like a new signature that matched that storyline, that sort of Boba finding his Tuscan family, and they're out in the desert, and it's real sandy and just an arid climate, and it's Tatooine, like we're back on Tatooine, but it feels like a new Tatooine that we haven't seen before, and it deals with Boba becoming one with these Tuscans, and they have this tribal sort of primal thing about them, and it feels religious, and when you think about those sorts of experiences or those sorts of ceremonies, many times folks sing, and it's like everyone has a voice, and it's almost like you can connect to the sound. If we used vocals a lot in the score, we were attempting to connect you almost like subconsciously to that character going through this religious experience, because not everyone maybe could play a guitar, but like everybody can produce a sound with their voice, and it's a very like guttural sort of it's just it connects you one-on-one with somebody, I think, in a really sort of primal way, almost pre-musical. It's like it feels like a religious experience when you hear vocals sung in that sort of way, I think. And it felt like it fit the story for Boba becoming one with his Tuscans, and he gets his new garb, he gets his new robe and everything, and it's a very important moment for him in one, being saved by these folks, and then two, earning his stay with them, and finding himself again.
Is there, because it encompasses moments like that, which can then be directly contrasted with action sequence, like in the same episode with the train.
Right.
Is one of those styles of scenes harder than the other to score?
I would say that they each present their challenges. They're in maybe like a slow moving or like ceremonial scene, like we've been speaking about. It presents a certain amount of nuance that you want to support the picture and support the story and help tell the story, but you don't want to hit it too hard. You don't want to overdo it. You have to present the music in such a way that it has a bit of nuance and subtlety with it, so that it supports the picture and doesn't cover it up. And but then with an action sequence, that I would say, like, a lot of times action sequences can be tough because there's just so many moving parts, and they may be, they usually take a little more time to like find that right balance of what are we going to address and acknowledge on screen, and what are we not, and how do you find a way to like tie a whole action scene in together. With the train sequence, I think it's like a 7 or 8 minute scene in total, but I figured I'd approach it with, I'll find like one bass rhythm that I could basically ride out the entire way, but on top of that have these little episodes that happen, when we see the Tuscan kid, signaling to the other Tuscans, and then when it cuts down to Boba and everybody on the speeder bikes, and then when the speeder bike blows up, and then when the train shoots almost like the video game-esque laser thing, the exhaust, I guess it would be, but there were all these different episodes within that if it helped at least to make the scene really groove and flow, if I could keep it all within a similar type rhythm. So underneath it, you will hear like a synth patch that I found, and a certain kick drum rhythm that sort of you could hear throughout the entire cue, and it helps kind of tie it together in that sort of way. Yeah.
We're talking about how much this score encompasses in terms of different styles. It goes a lot of places. When you are composing the music, do you immediately get a sense in your head of what instruments are going to be playing this, or does that take a lot of kind of experimentation?
Sometimes, yes, you immediately have inspiration for that. I mean, I'm working on a project now that I just watched a scene where I was like, I know that I need to do this, and it just spoke to me in that sort of way. But then other times what's really fun is just to experiment and see what kind of works. And then if a door opens up from some improvisation that you do, or from playing around with other musicians, it may open up a door to say, oh, okay, like crazy saxophone would be, a sound that we could, lean on for this sort of character, something like that. But, a lot of times at the beginning of projects, we have jam sessions with different musicians, and it's kind of fun to just step away from the picture, step away from the computer setup and your, all the different machines we use to do our jobs, and just play music. Because that's how we all started with it, is, playing music with friends. And so a lot of times at the beginning of sessions, or beginning of projects, we'll have like a jam session that we'll just improvise with different people and see what's fun and see what works, and then take that material and build a palette out around some of those elements that we recorded, just kind of jamming with different friends.
Yeah. Well, what I find very fun about these series on Disney Plus is that they're really expanding the Star Wars universe into new places, beyond just the one genre that the main movies are taking up. So it's fun to watch them dip into a story that can encompass all this type of music. Does it make you think about like where you could go next if there's another series you got the opportunity to be on? What other types of things you could put into Star Wars?
It does. I mean, I do feel like the TV shows that Disney Plus has produced for the Star Wars franchise, and Lucasfilm have produced for Disney Plus. I mean, it's very exciting, because I feel like some of the genre type tropes that they'll lean into, the creators, John and Dave, a lot of times, like, I don't know if that would work so well in a big, feature film. You can kind of be quicker and grittier with the TV shows, and lean into these sort of genre based moments a little bit more as opposed to maybe the feature film side. It's exciting because I know that they have like tons of ideas, and they're always just the most fun people to collaborate with too. And they're open to hearing fun music. I don't know if, I know that the themes are strong enough to exist with any story, the themes from The Mandalorian or even Boba Fett. But at the same time, the way that we present them, maybe it's more fun to do these sort of genre-based music techniques for these TV shows. It's almost like the door's wide open, and however they want to take these shows, like, we're there for it, and it's just very exciting to be able to flex different muscles and learn new techniques and try out different things for that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, it's great results here with the music for
I'm
this
glad
series.
you're enjoying it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sitting down to discuss it with me. Can't wait to see where all the characters go next. But if you're out there watching, subscribe to Gold Derby. Make sure you stay in touch with us. Joseph, thank you once again.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.